Hi, class. I hope everybody's doing well. Today, we're going to talk about managing your team. So, if when you coach, it's not all always X's and O's. So, a lot of managing you have to do, a lot of logistics, things that you never thought you'd do. So, today, we're going to cover some of those things that coaches need to be cognizant of when they are managing their team. So, here it goes. In this chapter, we're going to cover policy management, information management, management of your personnel, your players, your assistant coaches, management of instruction, your practice instruction, event and contest management. The coach needs to be mindful of a lot of things when it comes to that, from the concessions to the restrooms. There's a chance you might be needing to handle that. Logistics management, and then lastly, financial management. So these are the 7 managers you need to be. The same thing I just talked about. We will dive into each one here as you are the manager. So, policy manager, team policy. Preseason, let's create the policy. The coach needs to have the policy ready for the players to go, and then we're going to decide how do we distribute the policy. There's different ways you can do this. You can hand it paper and pen. I might have students or my athletes sign something electronically, possibly. That way you can keep record of it, or you can do paper and pen. Create the policy, have your athletes sign off on it. In season, that's your manual. You're going to look at the policies, make sure they're being followed. And if they're not being followed, then it's time to enforce them. You're going to need to use discipline. A 3-strike policy is always a good suggestion, a good way to work with this. And then postseason, after the season, you're going to evaluate the policies. Maybe you had a policy where somebody's 1 minute late to practice, that they're benched for the game. Maybe you just couldn't stick with that. Maybe it was just too strict. Then you would have to reevaluate and say, maybe we'll change that one. So yeah, you're constantly looking at the policies. Next here, information management. We want to create an information system and policies on its use. Look at this book here. This is how we keep all the stats. Now, that's great, and this is the old way we used to do it, but what happens if you lose that book? What happens then? Now you lost all your statistics. So I like having the book, but I would also put it in the computer after the game, enter the stats in the computer in some type of system. It might be Microsoft Excel, something like that. And the policy, who has access to it, who enters the data. I used to have an injured player, a player that's hurt, maybe can't play. I'd have them do the scorebook because it keeps them involved in the game. It keeps them to pay attention and to have a role on the team. So maybe that's maybe you want to give that job to that person. In season, collect, store. So you collect information, you store the information, and disseminate is means to broadcast information. How are you going to get the information out to the public? Maybe your team has a sport information director. Maybe they don't. Maybe you're going to put everything on Twitter or Facebook. How are you getting the information out? Every team is going to look different. Every coach is going to do this differently. Postseason, update the records, store them, keep the archives. We want information such as athlete information, support. This could be their physical exams. Not everything is going to get posted. Statistics get posted, but other athlete info might be confidential. You need to work with confidential information. You need to manage that. Support personnel, practice and training plans. I used to like to keep a binder, and every year I'd have a new binder with all my practice plans in it. After that week's meet, I would look and say we did well or we didn't do well, and I would record the results. But that lets me know what practices ended up resulting in a better performance and what practices did not work for us. event plans, recognition and awards, I should say. You can do that at a banquet, keep records. Personal for coach. The coach wants to keep some notes and ideas. You have logistics, travel logistics, financials, governance and policies, and contest records. There is a lot to keep track of. Personnel manager. So preseason, let's determine how many assistant coaches do we need. Let's say your team is 5 people. Let's say you have a basketball team of, let's say, 7 people, right? How many assistant coaches do we really need? Maybe 1, maybe 2. I don't know if you need any more than that. Select and train your staff members. The best thing a good manager can do is proper training. That onboarding, that work in the front end is going to help you a lot in the back end. Recruit, select, and prepare athletes for the season. As a college coach or high school, you have to recruit in high school too. Maybe in gym class or something like that. You want to find athletes. You need to recruit them. You need to select them. Maybe throw out a tryout or something like that. And prepare your athletes. In season, you're going to organize and control your staff and athlete activities. Postseason, recognize, reward, and evaluate your staff and athletes. Good to reward your staff. Maybe take them out for dinner, something like that. Let them feel a part. Let them feel valued. Let them feel recognized. Okay. Here we go. Communicate this to your personnel. Staff introductions, team philosophy. Everybody should have a copy. Write it down like a hard copy. Organizational structure, staff responsibility. So what's the assistant coach responsible for? For me, just give you an example. We had to ride vans to all the away games, and I did not feel very comfortable, although I did it, riding a van with 10 different people in there. It's a lot of responsibility down the New Jersey Turnpike. It wasn't fun. But, I need 2 vans because we had a decent sized team. So my assistant coach, I told you have to ride the second van. You're responsible for that. And my assistant coach knew that's a responsibility. So he made sure he's ready to do it. I might ask my assistant to run warm-ups, or maybe if there's a day I have an emergency, they might be running practice. Staff conduct, what is appropriate, what is acceptable. Budget, I'm going to communicate to the staff what we have funds, salary, equipment for. Problem solving, how do we solve problems? And we all have a pulse on the athlete eligibility. We need to get a pulse for that so we know who's struggling, who's eligible, who's not. Communicate this to your personnel. Emergency medical procedures. We should have an emergency action plan. Coach should make an emergency action plan. Athlete staff relations. Athletes conduct. Again, that should be in the handbook. Parental issues. So what do you do when a parent asks you a question? How do you handle it? What I told my assistant coaches was, send them to me. I will, as the head coach, I will handle it. My assistants weren't paid to deal with parental issues, so that was always something that I had to work with, and that was okay. Plan for initial preseason team meeting with all athletes, and you need to communicate that. Text your athletes, email them, get their confirmation. Meet with the athletes' parents. I like to talk with the parents at the meets. It was a good time that I had at our cross-country meets to talk with the parents after the meet, of course, not before. Communicate your schedule. Should be online. It should be legible. Make sure everybody has a copy of that. Travel procedures. My team, we're traveling. You're going to get meal money. You're getting $10 meal money. You're wearing your team warm-up. If you're not wearing your warm-up, let's say, in college football, some teams travel suit and tie. I personally liked having warm-ups. Then I don't run the risk of somebody that maybe didn't have the means to afford a suit and tie, and I don't want that athlete to feel like they, feel like they couldn't afford it or anything. So we purchase warm-ups for everybody. Communicate what skills you need to know. Evaluation and athlete selection. Will you conduct tryouts for your team? When will you conduct the tryouts? And will you evaluate athletes for other purposes, such to plan instruction, classify them in the categories? You might be looking for certain positions that you're looking to fill. So yeah, the tryout can have a lot of different functions to it. Okay. Document your evaluations so you can justify your decisions. If an athlete said, "Why did I get cut?" You might say, just an example, well, your 40-yard dash was a 5.6 and the other athlete ran a 5.3. The other athlete scored a 90% rating on catching and throwing, and you scored a 50%. So based on that objective data, that is why we decided to keep the other player. That athlete then is going to at least know that this is not subjective. You're being objective. As the coach, you really need to be objective and have hard data. Team captains. Some teams have captains, others don't. Most coaches will elect team captains. What the duties of the captains do: discuss the athlete concern with the coach. So my captains, when I did have captains, they would tell me, the athletes don't want to eat at this restaurant. They'd rather go to Panera or whatever. Little things like that. Or maybe a lot of people are saying they're sore today. The athletes would kind of be that messenger to me, the captains. They represent the athletes to the coaches. They present the ideas and suggestions, organize team activities away from athletic environment. Our captains will get people to go to Caesar's Bagels, get their teammates to go and organize meals together. Show leadership on and off the field. I'd have my captains run the warm-ups and the cool downs because that's stuff I can delegate to them. They're good at that. They know how to do it. They've been in the system. I'm picking somebody with good academics that works hard. Athletically, that's probably the last thing that I'm worried about. Typically, you want somebody that's a good runner or whatever, good athlete. But most importantly, I want somebody that models hard work, has good academics, and they're good enough to be on the field at the very least, to be a starter. More duties of team captain: demonstrate positive attitude, encourage other athletes to do the same. They abide by the team rules. They serve as a role model for the team. They do the coin toss, as you see in this picture here: heads, tails, which are we getting the ball? Are we kicking the ball away? Okay, so those are more duties of team captains. Team handbook. One thing I will say when you coach, and I've said this probably 1,000 times already, but you better remember, know the rules. Get the rule book for your league. Whatever your league is, get the rule book. Have your team have a handbook. Put the rules of the sport in your handbook. Talk about what tactical skills. You might have athlete workouts and preparation. And you can put your forms in there: physical exam form, code of conduct form, academic forms, maybe travel forms. When an athlete travels, they need to let their professors or teachers know. Here's an example of an athlete information form: name, address, phone, email, student ID, sport. Okay, emergency contact info. Who are we going to call in the event of an emergency? Next, we have instructional manager. Oh, look, who's that there? Yeah, that's me. And one of my cross-country teams. What an awesome team that was. Good group. Preseason, set the goals. In season, you organize instruction and you cater the plans based on performance. Postseason, you evaluate the performance. So you're setting the instructional goals. With this particular team, I've realized that we couldn't run 20 miles a week right from the get. Some teams can do that. With mine, I had to adjust just in order to keep everybody healthy and make it through the duration of the season. Event and contest manager, plan events, schedule contests. So for me, I like competition. I like to schedule with teams that are going to challenge me. Sometimes in coaching, you're going to have that opportunity to reach out to teams, and especially in college, you can reach out to teams. You can schedule against whoever you want. If they're willing to go up against you, you can do it. So you want to make sure, though, have a good mix of the confidence building games and a good mix of the hard events and confidence boosting. For instance, this track right here in Newark, Branch Brook Park. My runners, it's a fast track. That's like a rubberized turf. We used to run really well on this particular track here. And I would schedule that every year because it was a confidence booster. You run your 5K in 19 minutes and you feel good about yourself. And then don't get me wrong, we had a track that was all uphill for 3.2 miles. So you want to mix it up really. At the end of the season, you're going to evaluate your schedule and see maybe what do I want to do differently next year. One time we ran on a track that had rocks all over the track, big rocks and tree branches falling all over the place. My team was not happy. And I said, you know what? Honestly, with the rule book, there should be no obstructions in the course. I said, no, thank you. That second year, we don't want any part of that. Contest management, facilities. You might need to make sure that there's bathrooms for everybody. Officials, you might be scheduling officials. Janitors, make sure things are clean. If your team comes in and says the locker room's dirty, you don't want that to happen. You want to make sure everything is being taken care of. Security, you might need security, you might not. Mercer and Essex used to be a big rivalry, basketball-wise, probably still is. We used to get security for those games because sometimes it could get a little bit very competitive, let's say that, and at the team handshake at the end, we'd make sure that security was there because the two teams sometimes didn't like each other. Ambulance for collision sports like football, you just never know if there's going to be a spinal injury or something like that. Need an ambulance by and ready. It's code. Trainer, athletic trainer, and bathrooms. Pre-contest management, meals. Very important. We talked about nutrition. What kind of meal, though, do you want to serve your team before the game? It should not be cheeseburgers or anything like that. As I said, a nice protein, carbohydrate meal, carb-heavy meal that is going to fill your athletes up. Make sure the athletes are eating things they're comfortable with. Make sure that your team knows the starting lineup. Okay, when the whistle blows, everybody should know who's supposed to be where. Fluid replacements, you can talk tactics. Then your team warm-up should be pretty consistent. Have a team meeting. Contest management. You might need to handle your athletes' behavior. You might need to pull them out of the game for a minute to cool down. You might need to handle assistant coach behavior. You might need to keep your own behavior in check. Or it could be the crowd. Sometimes the crowd is yelling at coaches or players. Manage substitutions in and out. One thing I will say about the subs is in the beginning of the season, you want to try and get everybody in. because it builds team camaraderie. Maybe in your non-league games, build that team camaraderie, make everybody feel like they're important part of the team. And then as you get toward league play and championships, you're going to be substituting a little bit less. You're more focused on that competitive aspect. But it does do your team good to give everybody experience in the beginning, because you never know when that person's number is going to need to be called again. Halftime adjustments. Sometimes halftime give you 10, 15 minutes to talk about what you can do differently. A good coach is going to make the right adjustments at halftime. In-game stats and notes. Post-game, who do you think? I say you handshake, handshake the other team, thank the officials. Message to communicate after a win or a loss. If you win and it's an ugly fashion, the message is going to be different. If you win and you play great. If you lose and you play a really good team, but you lost by a point or two, I don't think that's the time to come down hard on your team. You're going to tell them that their effort was good. You tried, you worked hard. Supervised locker room. Again, this is where we had security for certain basketball rivalries and soccer big contests that we have between rivals at Mercer. Keep somebody outside the locker room just in case. You never know. Sometimes fights can spill into the facility. You just never know. Post-game meal. Athletes are going to need to eat, and they're going to probably need meal money. If I'm driving 3 hours to Maryland, I'm not going to send my team on the bus back to Mercer and not give them something to eat. So you want to think about that. Media, you might have to talk to the media. Logistics manager. Preseason. Plan for facilities, equipment, uniforms, supplies, and transportation. You might not need uniforms every year, new uniforms, but make sure that everything's looking good. It's your team's brand. Plan for transportation. If you're going on a really far trip, instead of a small bus, you might take the big bus. You might take instead of the small 12-person, we have there's like the coach buses as well. So they hold like 30 people. Give everybody a little space to sleep. In season, monitor for cleanliness, availability, safety. We're checking everything out. Postseason, evaluate each logistical function. Financial manager. Preseason, you have funds. As a college coach, you're going to be able to offer scholarship. And let me tell you this, from my experience, I had 7,000 to work with, and I could divvy that up between like 10 runners. Some runners got 1,000, so whatever it is. But I will tell you this, keep in mind, I would focus my monies not on the most talented athletes, but the athlete that has that nice mix of talent and hardworking ability. Now, sometimes the athlete that's your most talented might be the hardest worker too, but focus your money on those reliable athletes if you ever are giving out scholarship money. So one of you might coach college one day. Maybe a few of you will. So again, scholarship money, give them to your reliable athletes that are going to show up to work every day. In season, approved purchases is needed. In August, it's hot. My athletes wanted a tent. Said, all right, I'll ask the athletic director. We got the purchase approved. We got a tent for the athletes because you're sitting there for an hour before the meet. You want to keep cool. Postseason, you're going to look at your income and expenses. I talked about scholarship. So here's some sources. Funds from sponsors. At Mercer, we have sponsors at the soccer field. There's a few sponsorships there. Fundraising events. Our baseball and softball team go to Myrtle Beach every year. They fundraise for that. Participant fees. Do the athletes have to pay? Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. Booster donation, those are your alumni. Gates and concession receipts, so those are the tickets you sell before the game. You have parking fees, maybe not. Advertisement sales, and you can also solicit for donations as well. Time management, last part. We have mythical time. Time management is so important as a coach. That actually took up more time coaching a college team than my full-time job did. But some people have mythical time, and you can apply this to your schooling as well. You think you have time that you don't have, or underestimating the time demands. Like, I need to study for a test here. I think I have plenty of time to do it, but really you need more time. Task creeping. Stay on top of your work. Stay on top, and then the tasks don't creep up on you last minute. So it's like, if you don't pay a bill right away, it's no problem. But if you go 3-4 weeks, now you're almost at that time when you need to pay it. That has creeped up on you. Task hopping. Oh, I'm working on one thing, and then I just got a text message that distracted me. Now I'm going to go handle this text message from my athlete that has a question. And now, you're bouncing from back and forth. Multitasking is like a myth. It's like a myth, it doesn't work so well. Ignore reality. How can you improve your time management skills? I want you to think. How can you improve your time management skills? Okay. That is all that I have for this. I hope you have a wonderful day. If you need anything, please email me. I'm here and I'm happy to help you. Take care, and I'll see you. Bye.